Hi there, thank you for joining me on the Passionative podcast. This is your host Sagar Mehta, and today I want to talk about how to stick with what you love, how to keep following your passion and not giving up on it over and over. This is something I've struggled with a lot personally and only recently started to fix, and I really want to share how I've been able to do that. Now, on my computer, I've got this folder called Development Hell. This is a Hollywood term for films that are started but never completed and released. And just like Hollywood, that folder on my computer is where all my projects go to die a slow, painful, and yet incomplete death. For a long time, I kept thinking that this is just me being me, committing to something but not quite finishing it. Or maybe I had a severe problem with attention and simply couldn't keep it on one thing long enough to see it till the end. This was all okay because those were just random projects that didn't affect my life directly. However, I started to take notice of how this habit spilled over into other parts of my life, especially with my passion for music. So I sat down and I really started to think about how bad this problem actually was. And here's the pattern I found. I would have the epiphany for the hundredth time that music is where I belong. I would come up with some sort of an idea for a song or lyric or melody, and I would sit down to put it all together. I just needed it out of my head and into the real world or the digital world. This got me started on other kind of things related to music, my old music and lyrics, stuff I kept saved as templates for a song in the future, and so on. But as some time went by, real life started to hit back a bit harder, and I would just go back to my usual routine. So, all that was left of a passion that I had had for life were bits and pieces of ideas, some half complete but never fully done. If you know inside that there's something you ought to be doing, something you were built for, something that's your calling, something you could have been good at only if you tried a bit harder, and you keep coming back to it but never quite stick with it, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I sat down there reflecting on this and I hated it. If I ought to be doing this, why wasn't I doing it more instead of less or none at all? Why wasn't I able to stick with what I love to do? I really wanted to turn this around. But the thing with creating things and following your passion is that none of the advice about finishing what you start works properly. You can't set milestones and break them down into smaller milestones. You can't turn off distractions, as that's no guarantee of you focusing on getting it done. And you can definitely not just do it. If you start and stop on your passion, or you simply start and stop a lot of things in general, you can break that pattern. All you need is a pattern interrupt. Here is how I've come to understand this three-step process. When you're creating something that matters to you, when you're doing something related to it, first recognize that you're starting to get distracted. The words don't flow, the next note or beat doesn't fit, that next stroke of the brush doesn't feel obvious. Feel it in you, notice it, really notice it, because as you do this, it would start to slowly swell up. This will be hard to do the first time you do it, but you will get better at this each time you do it, and you can practice by doing the same thing in everything you do. Distractions are everywhere, and no matter what you're doing, you can notice this feeling building up in you. Next, acknowledge the built up. I've seen that saying it out loud, or just to yourself if there are others around you, helps a lot. And positive language works far better than negative language. So instead of telling yourself, no, focus on this, instead say, okay, I feel like I need to do something else. This in itself is going to be very powerful. A lot of people are doing these two steps already, and you've probably done this without even knowing it. Many times, though, we just tell ourselves that we'll do just this one thing quick, respond to that text, get back on that email, or check out this next cat video, and then get back to what we were doing. And yet, we never do. I think it is important to understand why we never get back. I feel that it's not a matter of breaking the flow or just losing your focus. It's all about the big picture. I think it's because nothing happens if you don't do what you love to do. Nothing of matter changes in the world when you stop doing it. Sure, you may have a little regret the next time you recall it, but you won't get back to it just because of that regret. Or you may just decide, really decide, to do it again, but you know that that does not achieve anything. So here's the third step, the pattern interrupt. Think back to why this matters. Why did you start doing this? And don't just say this is your passion. That does not mean anything really. It won't get you to do it. Remember what it makes you feel like. How happy and content doing what you love, this pesky little thing you're about to stop doing right at this moment, how amazing it actually makes you feel. I've come to believe that people would be way more happier and content with what they do if only we decided to follow our feelings about things and not the goals or results because of doing those things. We lose sight of our why. This is why we don't follow through on our passions. And the why is not the success or money it will bring us. No, it is how it makes us feel that makes us do what we do. This is why it's so simple to live with any kind of regret. We regret not doing something, but we still don't do it because we forget why it was important in the first place. Why did it matter at all? When we lose sight of how something makes us feel, it is not important and we will never stick with it. So go ahead and practice this pattern interrupt that I've just talked about and let me know how it goes. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Passionative podcast, and I'll catch you next week.